So with indoor season in full swing, I figured what better time than to set up my Barebow for indoors, as well as a kind of a mini review, first look at a few different products, including the Wiawis MXT-XT limbs here. These are the wood versions. I have piles of their new stuff back here that I've got to review. I haven't had time yet to do so. I've been on the road traveling and coaching a lot. I'm also going to throw Ben Rodger's arrow rest on and get rid of the sniper. Got a few things to say about the sniper here, and I can't wait to put the Ben Rodger's rest on because I set it up on somebody else's bow and I'm really impressed with it, and I want to share with you some thoughts on that. Going forward, I will do a full review on that as well as these limbs too, so be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell down below. When I do upload that video, you'll get notified that way, and it really genuinely helps this channel out and helps it grow. Also, I will be turbo tuning some RX7s in the 420 spine, the big ones that are 2315 sized arrows, essentially 2312, but take 2315 components, and try to get it all set up before I head out of town tomorrow to do a bit more coaching because the student that I'm coaching wants to shoot some mock matches against me, so I better have my Barebow ready to do so. So I figured might as well take this opportunity, generate some content for the channel, and hope you like it. So first things first, I did unbox and kind of preliminarily just assembled these Wiawis MXT-XT limbs here. The best part about them is actually right here. That's what MXT stands for, is Marvelous Extreme Bow Technology. So that's perfect because Marvelous Extreme Bow Technology XT Extreme? I don't know. Who knows? But they look very sharp. I'm glad to see going back to some white limbs personally. You know, all these reflective heat coatings that everybody's putting the time and effort into putting on the limbs. It's silly to do it in black because it absorbs heat a little bit more than white. At least white would reflect it some. And, you know, the limbs themselves look ultra sharp. I see one little minor overspray issue here at the tip. There's a little bit of black ghosting there. Don't know if you can see that. The tips on them are much thinner. I'll do a full review on this in the future, but I am going to have links to all of this gear down in the description below. So if you're interested in checking out some of the products that I'm featuring here on the channel, just check down in the description below and grab those. But yeah, I mean, the limbs themselves look super great, and the torsional stiffness is off the charts. I bet you they're higher than any other of the win-and-win limbs. These are just ridiculous. I can't wait to do that torsional test on the bench when I have some time. And they sound a little different. They were much easier to string, and they feel very smooth compared to these standard MXT-XPs, the last year's limbs. I did lay them side by side, and they are the exact same curve profile. So they're not going to feel too different as far as the smoothness compared to this limb, but they have some upgrades and a few other things that I'll get into in the full review. I also plan on doing some sort of test where I do the MXT-XT versus the NS-XT, XPs, NS, XPs, that's what they are. And do a bit of a side-by-side comparison, speeds, draw force curves, draw weight, feel, blind test, all that kind of stuff. I will compare that, and I'll maybe shoot them head-to-head against each other at 70 meters. Win&Win sent me another Meta LX to be able to do that, so I think that'd be really fun to go back to 70 meters and shoot each bow, 3 arrows each, and compare and contrast directly so you can see that. Now, I did grab one of these based on a recommendation from Joel Turner. This is Ben's Arrow Rest, made by the Shotmasters company. So this is Ben Rodger's Barebow Rest, or recurve rest. Really nice guy, super barebow shooter, and I already set one up on a friend's bow that I'm coaching, and I really like it. And I found that I'm not a fan of the sniper so much because I have found some issues with it inconsistently dropping, especially with really heavy indoor arrows, at least heavy point indoor arrows, because you have to set it sensitive enough to drop, but not so sensitive that it falls, and that heavy point weight is just too much, and you end up having a setup that just doesn't drop for you, and the arrows don't hit consistently. So because that's exactly what I'm going to be doing, running 200 grain points in the RX-7 arrows in the 420 spine, I'm only doing that because they've been out of stock everywhere for months, and the 420s was the only spine I could get that I could put a heavier point in, because I could buy points off the shelf. Actually, I had some 23, 15, 200 grain points to put into them, so it is what it is. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the highest plate also on my Barebow to move that arrow up as much as possible. Why I'm thinking I'm going to like that is because it's also going to move my crawl further up the string, because it will follow the arrow. That means I'll be drawing the limbs back more evenly. So I want to have the arrow high as much as possible in my head, so that way it feels as good as possible. So with all that being said, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run a time lapse and basically show you me building the bow so you can see what I'm doing. Just, you know, follow me along with the journey today. So I'm going to build this bow up. I got to align the limbs, put the new rest on with the higher plate, move the knocking point up, adjust the rest, get my center shot set, and then I need to pull out the arrow saw, cut the RX-7s to approximately the right length, because I'm going to run a clicker. As you know, based on another video, I've been messing around with Barebow and a clicker. I'm going to continue that, and I'm going to quick fletch some arrows, hopefully get outside and get a basic tune, and maybe be able to shoot a couple of arrows for you to see the type of performance that this bow ends up being. I can give you a little bit of feedback on the limbs, the rest, and the overall setup of this bow. So. Alright, so I've got the arrows all fletched up. I got them cut, points installed, fletched up, everything's good to go. I used double-sided tape to hold the feathers on so I could speed up this process. Still using left wing because I had a handful of those. And the bow went together just fine. The limbs aligned excellent. They were almost perfect. I probably could have just left them alone, but you know how I am. I like to really dial things in and get things as perfect as possible. And the rest went on just fine. Once I figured out how to actually install it and get it set up and aligned, because the instructions aren't the greatest, it makes sense and it works really, really well. It's very, very neat actually. It's got some pretty cool features with this. It's like a springy rest, but it's not springy on the inside. We still use a plunger for that, but it's springy up and down, which is cool. I've got a clicker now mounted on the riser, and I cut the arrows to hopefully work there. I don't know if they're gonna tune. Fingers crossed that it works out, because I hope they're not too stiff at this point, because I don't really want to go up and draw weight. I want to keep it nice and low for Barebow. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything went together really well, and I'm really happy with that. I just didn't set my tiller or brace height yet, so I'm gonna do that and then go outside to 20 yards and hopefully get a rough tune on this bow. I get the knocking point set where it's supposed to be, tie on some permanent ones, and then I'm ready to rock, and should be able to shoot this just fine. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the tune works out. I just kind of blindly cut the arrows as long as I could while still using the clicker plate here, because I didn't want a sight bar like in that previous video that I mentioned about shooting Barebow with a clicker. So yeah, super excited to get this going. Let's head outside and see where I end up with the tune. Well, I'm outside here. I've got a camera down range, so you'll be able to see where the arrows go the whole time. And I'm gonna get right into kind of warming up and doing my best to see what kind of tune this is, make sure the clicker's set, all that stuff, and find the crawl, new rest. So lots of changes here, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it's as easy as possible, and I don't have to do a whole lot, don't have to cut arrows or anything like that. I'm hoping I can just dial this in super quick. I'm gonna start by aiming at the top spot. Put a 3-spot up because of the big giant fat arrows, and I'm hoping I group well enough that it makes sense to use a 3-spot. first, what I'm going to do, I want to make sure that the arrow actually rides in the center of the plunger as I pull it back, because, or near the center of the plunger, of course. Perfect. Because this springy rest, or bends rest, that kind of acts like a springy, here at brace height, it sits really low because there's so much weight. There's 200 grains on the front here, so it's pulling down and bending the rest down. That's why the sniper wasn't working for me, or at least my friend, when I was setting up his bow, is because the heavy point weight, you have to have the sniper stiff enough to support it. But then when you actually shoot it, it's not getting enough force down to actually drop the rest, and it was being inconsistent, and it was impossible. So insert bends arrow rest, and hopefully this solves that issue, but it still hangs low when it's at brace height, and it elevates once you draw back because there's less of the arrow hanging off the end of it. These limbs definitely sound different than the other MXT limbs. They hit way to the right as well, which is odd. But the height's pretty good. Alright, see what happens with the bear shaft. Not flying the greatest, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's way off. Weak. I'll turn my button pressure up. I'm gonna go get some tools and dial my button pressure up a little bit so I can start hitting closer to the center, and then I'll look at stiff weak and go from there, because I had the button very, very weak for the sake of the last video that I shot fat arrows out of this bow to get a good idea as to what it was at. So I'll be right back. I didn't check tiller. I forgot. I'm gonna check after this. Actually, that's going to be very, very close. Yeah, this is set to recurve tiller. Shorter on the bottom. That's funny. That should maybe fix the knocking point once I get it dialed in. I want to not change draw weight, because now that the plunger tension is reasonable, the arrows are hitting pretty close to the center, and it brought the tune in, so that's good. I won't have to do a ton, which is excellent. I just stumbled upon this, which I'm very happy about. I am going to go in on the top like a quarter turn to start, and I'm going to go out on the bottom. Almost the same. 7 1/8, 7 5/16, so about 3/16 there. Let me give a little bit more. Maybe not, because I'm not crawling so far thanks to the higher knocking plate, their knocking point plate. Or at least I'm not drawing the bow so far off center, so I don't think I need such a big tiller split to maintain a good hold. It was holding just fine with the recurve tiller, oddly enough. But I'm definitely still overloading the bottom limb, so I wanted to get that really close, actually. To the center of the button, 22.6-ish. A little high, but I'll live with it. I like it really right around 22.5 centimeters. It's really nice not having to set the sniper up every time. caught that one on the power stroke, so I'm going to shoot that one again. Alright, a little bit on the weak side on that shot. Locking point's pretty close, maybe a little high. Actually not too bad. So I'm gonna move the knocking point down a smidge and reshoot it. The bow definitely feels much happier with the tiller split the way I like it. Pulling on it, it's very smooth and steady. It doesn't want to dip or move, and it's just sitting there really steady, and it's not wobbling around like it was before. So very happy with that. It also feels more comfortable on my fingers. Anchor's a little bit easier to get to. The leather's a little long, so I have to fuss a bit with my anchor, as you see me moving my head a considerable amount. But otherwise, very, very, very happy that I don't have to do a ton here. Maybe shortening the arrows a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch is really all that's going to be needed. My tiller bolts are just about all the way out. They're really starting to kind of tip away, or the limbs are really tipping into the tiller bolts. So I think I'm just really approaching the maximum distance out I can get on these precision tiller bolts on this riser. But you know, I like the limbs. They are very, very smooth, very stable. The reaction of them is great, jumps nice and hard. I'll be able to give you a better idea as to how they feel during the full review, and much better as to how they feel when I'm shooting them with my recurve. Just very in tune with that, and I'm much more comfortable with giving feedback because I have so much experience there on that. But I can tell you that they do feel good, these MXT-XTs on Barebow. The NS-XPs, I'm not sure. I would like to try them on my Barebow and see. They're just going to stack a little bit more through the clicker zone. Not that we have a clicker, except for me, on a Barebow. So I think that it may not be ideal, but it actually might be really good, because then there's a wall to pull against. But if you creep at all, you're going to be really punished by them, in theory. So I like these for Barebow more for that reason, at least in theory. I'll have to try it and actually let you know what I think. But I'm going to go get them, and I am going to adjust the knocking point first and shoot it again. So actually it didn't look too bad, and because I'm shooting such heavy point weight, I would expect the arrows to nosedive just a little bit. I'm actually very happy with this. With the arrow in the center of the plunger, the knocking point's not outrageously high. I am using standard 3D knocks, not biters, and biters typically tend to need a slightly higher knocking point than these. Might be seeing something with this rest in the clicker. I think the arrow's popping up when the clicker clicks. Keep an eye on that, just do a quick test. Yeah, definitely does. When the clicker clicks, the arrow goes boop and pops up just that little bit. I'll see if I can catch it on film and show it to you. That is not going to be good for consistency. The way it is because of, or the reason why, I guess, is because of the direction the clicker is actually pushing on the arrow. It's not straight from the side. It's slightly at a down angle, and because there's any pressure down and that rest is flexible, it's moving. So that is not going to be good for up and down consistency. I'm going to check it one more time. Yeah. So let's see if I can get it for you. This will be very hard with the camera. Slide it down. See how close I gotta be. Okay. So pay attention to the relationship of the arrow to the rest and the plunger. And I'm gonna pull it back, and when it clicks, that's when I want you to kind of notice it. I'm gonna do my best to keep everything in framing. Try it one more time. Well, that is incredibly disappointing for many reasons. One is I was actually very excited to try that with my Olympic style recurve because I like the idea of it moving and being a little forgiving on movement of the arrow, maybe mistakes, but because of the way the clicker is putting pressure into the arrow, it's just not going to work. I'd maybe have to shape and bend the clicker differently so it's actually pushing in directly at the side with no downward pressure. So that's actually very, very disappointing. Not a design flaw, just clearly is not built and made for use with the clicker. So it is what it is. And now that I've seen it move, I'm always going to have that in the back of my head. And it's just, yeah, it's unfortunate. Really wish that there was an easier setup for that. I suppose just going to a standard like AAE Free Flight Elite, because then it's a solid wire, it doesn't move, or a ZT, something like that. But then my crawl has to go deeper because it bounces off. So yeah, I guess sticking to standard Barebow with a very, very high anchor and at the cost of poor alignment and other things. There's a reason that everybody does it. And there's a reason that clickers aren't allowed, of course. So, you know, if I didn't use that, I wouldn't be seeing that issue with the actual rest moving anyhow. And possibly just throwing on a Free Flight Elite rest because this is just not going to work with a clicker. It's moving a dramatic amount, more than enough to absolutely shoot 6s and 5s. I don't know how much, if you could see it jumping up when the clicker clicked there, but it's a considerable amount, especially when you're using it to aim and you see it go bloop and then you shoot. It doesn't really instill confidence in the system, especially when you can clearly see there's a problem. So back to the drawing board. I think that is always the case with archery. That's why, you know, we all do it. Let's be honest, it's never easy. We thought it would be easy, but it's definitely not easy. And it's fun. It's an ever-changing challenge, and it is just the name of the game. So I don't really have anything else here today. I am going to go back inside, set up the bow, possibly with the other rest so it's not moving, so I can actually at least consistently shoot the bow without things moving on me. Like I said, I will do a full review of these Wiawis MXT-XT limbs, as well as Ben Rodger's arrow rest. And if you're interested in checking those out, remember, please do hit that subscription button and the notification bell down below. That way you get notified when I upload that video. And yeah, to everybody going and competing at Lancaster, good luck, and maybe I'll see you there. If you like this video, consider sharing it. Genuinely, that would help this channel grow. Also, if you wouldn't mind, please do consider supporting this channel. There's many different links down in the description below. I produce all this content for archers around the world to enjoy for free. And I can't thank my supporters enough. Genuinely, without you, I wouldn't be able to produce this content, at least not to this level. So thanks.